Hey, I just wanted to make this video because I've been reading a lot where guys are getting stuck on the side of the road. The car just keeps shutting off and they can't figure out why, and they end up having it towed and costing a lot of money. But I just want to show here that these cars are extremely simple to diagnose problems. Usually when you break down on the side of the road, it's either one of two things. It's either fuel or spark, lack thereof of each. With TR6s, it's usually spark, and but it's very easy to diagnose. So even on the side of the road, you can figure out what the deal is. So the first thing you would do is check for spark. The easiest thing to do, really, to start out with, is to take the distributor out, or take the distributor cap off. Take a look in here, make sure everything looks good. I have a Triumph 2 electronic ignition that I'm running, but you may have points. It's very rare that points would cause the car to just stop. If it does, it's usually the condenser. I don't have one here to show you, but in any case, this can maybe help you. If everything looks good there, usually this is the culprit right here, the ignition rotor. I have a black one here. The red ones are good. I've been having trouble with all of them, so any case, so you could look inside the cap. You could see these posts here. There's a spring-loaded button in the middle that contacts the rotor right there, which creates the spark. Anyway, that rotor spins around inside this cap, and it doesn't touch these posts, but it comes very close and it creates a spark and distributes it to all the spark plugs in the engine, and that's why it's called a distributor. In any case, you could look at that. Everything looks okay. This button should be spring-loaded. If it's not, then maybe it's not contacting the center there, and that might be the culprit. But anyway, if this looks good, you can put it back. Okay, the cap can be kind of a pain to get on, so I just stopped the video so I could get that on. I got that back together. So then the next thing would be to check to see if you're having spark to the cap. So you'd pull the coil wire off, have a screwdriver. Here you could try to do this one-handed. Okay. Another tricky thing. Anyway, I put that on there, and if you want, you could always hold the wire up close to there to see if the spark jumps, but chances are you'll get a good shock because there's about 55,000 volts going through there. Anyway, if you get it set up so that it's fairly close, the spark should jump to it. I have a pretty good ignition, so you should see it jump. So I'll just turn it over and see what happens here. You saw there that the spark jumped, so I got pretty good spark there. So I got good spark, so that means the coil is good, and chances are the cap and the rotor are good. Not guaranteed, but chances are they're good. Put that back together. The next thing is to check for spark at the spark plugs, because really that's what's most important. So what you do is take one of the spark plugs out and you ground it out somewhere on the engine where it's safe to do so. I didn't pull a plug out, but I took another spark plug here and I grounded it over here where you can see, and we'll turn it over and see what happens. see there that it sparked. So that means our cap, rotor, plug wire, at least that plug wire, everything is good. So you could assume that it's not an ignition problem or a spark issue. So next we'll go over to see about the fuel, which is pretty easy. We'll walk over here. Basically, you want to check and see if your fuel pump is working. What I've done here is I disconnected the fuel line right there and ran a hose into a jar just so I could turn it over and see if the fuel pump is pumping fuel. First thing to do is disconnect the coil wire so the engine doesn't start. And be very careful you don't spill fuel anywhere that's going to start a fire. But anyway, you can turn the engine over like this. You can see that we have pretty good fuel. Now another thing you can do if you have a gauge, come over here, get fuel pressure gauge, can set that up. I'll take this hose off. There, I got the hose off. Here's my gauge. Now you want to plug the gauge into the end of the line here. Again, I can't do that one-handed. Hang on. Okay, so I have it plugged in to the end. There's the gauge. What you want to see is at least 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds, up to 4. So let's check it out. So I'm showing about 6, which is quite a bit, but it seems to be running okay, so it's not a problem. But generally you want to see between 2 and 4. So we have good fuel pressure and it is holding. You sit there and watch it, make sure it's holding pressure, which it is. And so anyway, I can safely assume that my car should run, which it does. And but if you don't have fuel or you don't have spark, the car can't run. But these are very easy ways to check, even on the side of the road, if you have the tools, to see what your problem is. In any case, it may save you some money having to get towed or have an expensive diagnosis done. And I own a British car, so I carry spare parts. And I can just show you real quick in the trunk here, or the boot, that in here I have pretty much everything. I have an electric fuel pump. I have spare wires, cleaning supplies, of course, chair. I have all the tools, a jump box, multimeter, which you will need eventually, spare coil, all the tools I need to pretty much replace anything on the car on the side of the road that would go wrong. In this bag I have a spare distributor, spare rotors, spare ignition parts, points in case I have to change those. I have a handful of ignition rotors that I've been having problems with. Most of these are failed ones. They're just had a bad run of them. The one I have on there now seems to be working. I have a spare alternator, spare cap, rotor, points, pretty much anything I need. Jumper cables to get going on the side of the road. So the two things on these cars that usually go, as I said, is the ignition rotor and also the fuel pump. This is an aftermarket fuel pump. It pumps well though, as you could tell. And these also fail frequently. Some people get decades out of a good one. Some people like me go through them pretty regularly. But those are the two things that chances are will leave you stranded, and hopefully this helps. Grab some tools, some spare parts, throw them in the trunk, and you can save yourself some money. Thanks for watching.